recapping the men's NCAA championship game. It was an awesome defensive battle in the first half. I mean, it just felt like superstar defensive plays by Florida and Houston in the first half. It was a dunk fest at times. And then the shots started to fall for the Gators in the second half. Walter Clayton Jr., a couple of big shots. And with the game on the line, Houston, the best defensive team, could not find the offense to go win the game. Let's take a listen to the final call.
Florida leads it by 2. Uzan gonna go. Uzan, give it up. Cryer, 6 seconds, 5 seconds. Sharp. He won't. He can't touch it. He can't. 1 second. And it's over. Florida is back on top of the college basketball world. Championship madness.
65-63, Florida defeats the Houston Cougars. Time to break it down with us right now on the Dean Mercer Rug Cleaning Hotline. It's our buddy Marcus Mook Washington. What's going on, Mook?
Hey, what's happening, my man? Great weekend for college basketball with both the Final Four and the national championship last night.
Yeah, I mean, in an NCAA tournament in which I'll never forget it because there were no Cinderella stories. She might never find her slipper again. No 11 seeds in the Sweet 16 for the first time in 17 years. And yet, you're right. The Final Four and the championship game, it was 3 fantastic games of basketball.
Yes, and, Florida, I know the SEC had dominated the entire season. You had that all-SEC semifinals, and you didn't know what you were going to get because sometimes when teams are too familiar with each other, you get a lot of ugliness. But what you got was 2 teams that knew each other and then 2 coaches that did a great job with scheming against them knowing each other. So you got a great game there. And then, of course, Houston and Duke with that type of Duke team that had all of the same hype as the Zion Williamson's Duke teams had that would fall short. And then last night, my heart went out for Kelvin Sampson. With that being said, I thought that those were 2 deserving teams last night, and one had to win and one had to lose.
Yeah, and let's start with the unfortunate losers last night, Kelvin Sampson and his Houston Cougars. Are they going to be able to regroup and have another strong season next year? They ran through the Big 12 in the first year, but I'm a little worried that they're losing a lot of senior talent.
Yeah, they were definitely elder statesmen out there on the floor last night for Houston. The one thing that Calvin Sampson does that's so different than other programs, he does recruit specific to his philosophy, and he doesn't take chances on kids that may have 4 or 5 stars that everyone is running after. He doesn't bring those kids to his program hoping to change them. He finds guys that will fit into the program. I don't know if they can make a run to the national championship next year, but he will find a group of guys that buy into that style of basketball, and they'll be in the conversation next year. We're still dealing with the portal, so I don't want to say too much about next year, but I think that they will be fine from a perspective of being in the conversation in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament.
And Florida, we know when they win a title, they win back-to-back, and they're going to have, a 7'4" player next year? They're going to be loaded.
Yeah, and, Todd Golden is young. I think that's one of the things that played in his favor. Florida is recruiting like the next generation of college basketball. You don't have a guy who's holding on to the pre-NIL years. He's a guy that understands how to build a roster with how the game is being played and where the game is going. So I think that Florida, the big thing against Florida next year is the conference. SEC is flush full of money, and when their members decide to spend it, you know how difficult it could be. So from a talent perspective, he could have more talent next year, but not get as far. But the job that he did, getting them there, the job that he did last night was incredible for the program. It's incredible for the conference. And those guys, again, when your best player has the first half that he had, and you guys persevere with the others, and now you get yourself in a position to take the lead and to tie this game up and make your opponent make game-winning plays, that's just a team that's cohesive. beyond just saying they're talented guys, and that comes down to the coaching.
Yeah, Walter Clayton Jr., just a straight bucket getter. I thought he was the face of the NCAA tournament this year. He had back-to-back games of 23 points, then the back-to-back 30-plus games in the Elite Eight and the Final Four. He took over that game against Auburn and really did struggle against Houston. They did such a good defensive job in the first half. Then, unfortunately, they let him get a couple of open looks, the big-time and one and the big-time three, leading Florida to victory.
Yeah, and, again, I'm going to give Golden a lot of credit on this. In the second half, getting rid of the screen and rolls and going into the stagger actions and then the screeners. And that really, really played a part in Houston that is going to switch everything. Now, if Houston goes and they switch into a deny, Clayton, he doesn't get those shots. But because they're switching into the hip, not to get too much Coach Talk here, because they're switching to the hip, those screens and the screener actions gave him enough room to get his shot off. And again, this goes down to coaching. People seem to forget that coaching still does count in today's age. That got him free. He made a couple of shots. That opened up the floor. And I'd like to address that last play for a second. I don't know if anyone has come on here and has pointed this out. The failure in the last play for Houston comes in the failure of the screen action. When they go to set the down screen, Roberts is supposed to set the down screen on Sharp's man. If you go back and take a look at it, Roberts screens his own guy in drop. That allows the closeout that forces the final turnover. If he screens Sharp's man, now that's a switch situation, and Sharp does have enough room to get that shot off.
Now, I would love you to dive further into that final play because I don't understand why you're shooting a three there. Go send that game to overtime. Drive to the basket. Try to get an and one. I mean, that whole play was out towards half court.
Yeah, and that was looking like it was going for three from the very beginning. My thought process was in the second half just how they were calling the game. Obviously, you saw that the amount of fouls had ratcheted up in the last 20 minutes. For how Houston rebounds the ball at that point in the game, I'm running something to scheme me getting to the basket. Now, the previous two possessions might be what discouraged it. L.J. Cryer goes baseline to nowhere because his eyes are to the floor and not up. He gets trapped under the basket. He turns it over. The next possession, Sharp, I have no clue what he's doing. Florida has a perfect triangle on that side of the floor. He decides to go 1-on-3. He turns the ball over. So I don't know if that influenced it, but the one thing I would like to ask Kelvin Sampson, which was in the first half, you opened up the floor by throwing the ball inside. I don't understand why in the last 20 minutes that the ball was not, at the very least, being thrown inside, touched inside, even if it was to kick it out or whatever the case may be. But you lost your advantage. You became perimeter-oriented. And once Houston became perimeter-oriented, you saw how aggressive Florida got out on the perimeter because they knew the threat of throwing it inside, Houston had taken themselves out of doing that. So that's one of those coaching things I would like to know that. Not that Kelvin Sampson has to justify anything to me, but I would like to know what was the change of philosophy and not throwing the ball inside the way you did to start the game off.
Yeah, great stuff, Mook. And I think you're right. I mean, I am thinking back a couple of turnovers from Cryer and Sharp in the last minute and a half there. Part of the reason why maybe they went for the deep shot rather than driving to the basket. But I just felt like that entire second half, Florida was able to get out in transition. And the big and one from Huff, right? And then the big and one from Clayton Jr. The fast break points broke that game open. It's how they came back in my mind.
Yeah, and that did play a part. They did get it faster. And, hey, I have the same criticism of Houston as I did of Auburn. Sometimes you're married to your philosophy a little too much and not recognizing where your advantages are in that particular game. There were times where when Houston was still up by 10 and 12 and 8, that they could have ran and gotten easy baskets. And they intentionally slowed it down. We're going to start milking the clock. This is what we're going to do. And then Houston comes with a series of awful possessions that allows Florida to get back in. Now Florida is basically using Houston's misses because they were taking so many deep perimeter shots. Now that's the first pass of my fast break. And then Florida is rim running. The bigs are getting down there. Once you're trying to sprint with the bigs, now the perimeter in transition opens up. Now Florida is playing Florida basketball. That's what they love. And, I was surprised because Bruce Pearl did the same thing on Saturday when Auburn had chances to run. I know you didn't want to get in the track meet with them, but in the second half, they had chances to run. They decided to slow it down. You can see Pearl telling them, no, walk it up. And then they went through a series of bad offensive possessions that, again, allowed Florida to get in position to play Florida basketball using your misses to be the first pass of their fast break. And that's when Florida is, they are hard to beat.
Mook, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem, my brother.
Have fun, man. That was a good game. You're listening to AWOD Radio here on the New Sports Radio 910 The Fan, now 105.1 FM.